My favorite thing to do on this channel is to open booster packs whenever I run out of a certain set's worth of packs from my store. If I have a booster box available, that set, I'll crack it. I might as well post that on videos. That is a lot of fun, but also for my store, I buy a lot of collections, and it's always interesting to me to see how different people organize their collections. Some people, it's not even in binders. Other people, it's in binders by set or binders by type. So I thought I'd share how I organize my collection, see if anyone is kind of similar to that. So I'm going to get started with Premier. The very first set, 1995. A lot of these cards I've probably had since the mid-90s. I was kind of 8 or 9 when I first got into the game. So a lot of these main character cards, not sure when I got them, when I completed the sets, but cards like Han and Leia, probably didn't get a lot of those until I was in my teens, after the game was already out of print, although still something that I very much like to do. And I guess I kind of just assumed everyone would do it like this, but the more collections I buy, the more I realize that people split them out. But I just put the white border on the back of the black border cards, the same version, so Han will be on the other side here. And definitely going through the first few pages of Premiere, there's a lot of interesting cards to see. Main characters. Well, I understand a lot of people's complaint that Decipher made the main characters too hard to get. At the same time, at least in Premiere, there was a pretty good chance you could get a decent card in a pack. Of course, you could always get a rare 2 interrupt. But a lot of cards here that I definitely used in virtual deck days, but like doing moisture farming, but not a lot of stuff that I would still play with nowadays. There's always exceptions. Lightsaber Proficiency, still a very good card. And this has been one of my favorite cards lately. Being able to just put a bunch of high ability characters in your deck, a lot of ability 3 pilots and ability 4 and 5 and 6 characters, and there were games where I was retrieving upwards of 13 force a turn, so getting a quarter of your deck back in 1 turn. And if you can control battleground site and system, still do a lot of damage. I did okay with it in recent tournaments, one in Minnesota and one in Colorado, but against certain decks it just wasn't able to keep up. I had to invest too much in retrieving force and I couldn't do any damage. But the altar and sense cards, we'll see sense later. Definitely wasn't playing in the days where there'd be these drawn out sense and altar duels, but that does sound kind of cool. And I've always loved the add 2 Battle Destiny when these two people are together cards. Lots of those in Premiere and in other sets. I had a Legacy era Jedi Presence deck, being able to plop down Obi-Wan with another Jedi or Luke with another Jedi. I guess it'd be the other way around, and then having the Jedi double their power. Rebel Barrier, still use that in a lot of decks. So it's interesting with Premiere how a lot of the characters are obsolete, but there's so many still good interrupts. A lot of light side Death Star locations. Kind of surprising. Obi-Wan's Hut. That one, so a lot of people talk about Premiere Blue, and I think even in the video you can tell that the color of this one is just a little bit grayer than the other Tatooine sites. And that also has to do probably, well, it could have been, it's from a different print sheet for sure than the commons and uncommons, but yeah, Premiere Blue, as far as I know, is pretty much only a dark side phenomenon when they really ran out of yellow ink. And I don't actually have that card in any binder, but maybe in a subsequent video I'll remember to put that up. I remember when I couldn't, I mean, when these counted as rares, and now I have a box of 100 of them, but yeah, being able to put, I don't even know how many people sometimes put in hidden base decks, but 20 of them in a deck, something like that. You're not drawing high destinies, but that high forfeit and power relative to the deploy cost of 4 is pretty nice. And yeah, a lot of cards in here are pretty beat up because some of them are the cards that I had since I was 8 or so. Yeah, this one's got some some bad edgeware. For my own collection, I don't mind beat up cards so much, especially if they're cards that I've had for a long time. Some nostalgia there for sure. I remember trying to deploy Jedi lightsabers on characters of ability 3 and having to pay 4 force to use them. But just the fact that you could use a lightsaber was pretty cool. And into the dark side cards. So 2 Vaders here. I guess that's another reason I kind of like the white border and the black border together. That's why I like these soft sheets, is that they fold pretty easily and there's no concern about bending the cards, just because they're... I guess they don't protect the cards any, but at the same time, those thicker plastic sheets, when I say protect, they don't really protect against, bending, but at the same time, those harder plastic sheets can bend the cards themselves. And I always like to store them flat, that way I'm not putting any pressure on the pages to dent up the cards from the binder rings. A lot of these white border cards were in a Premier Unlimited set that I bought from a store that I can't even remember the name of anymore, but I'm pretty sure this was in the early 2000s, and I probably got it for like $24, something like that. There was a couple cards missing, but they weren't the main cards. Don't Get Cocky, actually, that one where Han and Luke add a Battle Destiny card. That was one of the cards missing, and I still remember that near around 20 years later. But back then it was cool to buy a set, and still didn't have a ton of cards. So if I bought a complete set, I would probably, Premier's 324 cards, I would probably get a card that, I'd probably see 50 cards that I'd never seen before when buying a set. And even up until I was completing my sets, probably in 2013 or so, there still had been a lot of cards that I hadn't seen yet. Definitely not in person. Possibly not even in pictures online. Expand the Empire, still a very useful card, being able to take the game text from one of your sites and moving it to adjacent sites. I gotta think of that card more often because there's so many sites, and I haven't even... Every time I look at a dark side site, I should look at the game text of it and see what I could do with it. I should start playing lateral damage more. I mean, there's a lot of cancelers for it, but man, if people aren't ready for it, to make a starship power and forfeit 0, that's never fun. For the light side, at least. Always trying to get this card to work in decks to add a light side force icon and a dark side force icon to non-battlegrounds after I've kind of set up there and have a good presence. But it's kind of hard to pull out of your deck, and it's a destiny of 2, so a little bit risky. And in Premier there was a good amount of counterpart cards, so Dark Jedi Presence is the same thing as Jedi Presence, Collateral Damage is the same thing as Friendly Fire, I believe, but also a lot of cards that were different for both sides, so... trying to see if there's any examples on this page. Not really. I mean, this is sort of the same thing as those Add a Battle Destiny cards. Oh yeah, this one, I don't know what the light side equivalent to that would be, but stopping movement of your opponent when you have stormtroopers on table. And also just like how Star Wars does kind of the same idea, but for opposite sides of the Force, so it could be worse. The light side sort of version of this reduces the force you have to lose. This one adds to the force you have to lose. Although it's, all based on the same conversation. Dark and light both have their very special flavors to them, I guess you could say. Another card I haven't used very much, but seems like a lot of fun, especially when you do it with Unsalvageable and Reflections 3, but knock somebody out of their ship and then make their ship go lost. Seems like a nasty trick. I remember playing this guy in a Sabacc deck, so just trying to get a bunch of cards in your opponent's use pile, then drawing Destiny, and every card with the same Destiny as the Destiny you drew has to be lost. That did some damage back before we played with shields. And anytime anytime I open a pack, even if it's not very good, I just like seeing systems. I think Decipher did a great job with the system cards, some of the best looking cards in the game. And Imperial Class Star Destroyer, great looking card. Haven't found a use for it in a deck yet, but yeah, just a cool view of the Star Destroyer. There's probably 10 to 12 different unique Star Destroyers, but this one might be one of my favorite pictures. Vader's Saber. I think that's one of those cards that I definitely got before I ever had a Vader, so I didn't have much to do with it. But yeah, definitely had a white border Vader Saber, and the only Vader I had was the Premier 2-player game one, who's not officially part of this set. And now we're on to New Hope. So in a lot of ways, a supplementary set to Premier. For obvious reasons, when Premier came out as the first set, you could play it on its own, but it'd be very difficult to play a New Hope on its own. And one of the cool things about A New Hope is that Chewbacca and R2-D2 are both rare too, so they're twice as common, even though they're still rare. They're twice as common as cards like Hunchback or other rare ones like Brainiac. So you had a good chance of getting what I would consider main characters. Wedge, on the other hand, was a rare one. So there's only half as many Wedges as there are Chewbaccas. One card I definitely wish I could find a way to use, but to use this to suck somebody from a site into a, what does it say here? Yeah, into a Sandcrawler site, which we'll see in a little bit, and then being able to beat them down. Probably doesn't work too often, but it seems like it'd be a lot of fun. Anytime they did clothing items like well, it was almost always capes. Obi-Wan's cape, Luke's cape, Vader's cape, which came later in Cloud City. I thought those were cool. An effect that carries the unique characteristic of each card with it. So yeah, Luke, one of the main things about Premier Luke, you could activate extra force if Luke wasn't at a Tatooine location. With Vader, you could add 1 to each battle destiny. I'm always looking for a deck that can play 3 of these, because now there's a defensive shield or an effect that lets these play for free, and haven't quite gotten it to work yet, probably because there's no room in the deck for it, but being able to grab 3 of their interrupts, I feel like that would take some people by surprise. You never know. Very strange card. This one was pretty useful in the virtual era. And I think when I first started selling, it was like a $15 card, but then that era ended. They kind of blanked it, and they started over the virtual card pool more or less. So that price kind of hung around for a while, but now it's down to like a $3 or $4 card. So in some ways that's kind of strange. In other ways it's kind of good that as different cards get virtualized, it really affects the demand for them, which means that there's still enough of a demand for the game that people are enjoying it. A lot of people are having fun with it. Very cool looking card that I wish did more. Pretty much really only helps you in attack runs. But adding 1 to the total, not such a big deal. I guess I've never tried an attack run deck versus a blow up Yavin deck, but maybe moving 1 tie would be able to make a big deal there, make a big difference, I should say. And this one was always interesting to me. Low cost, high forfeit, and sure, the opponent can add 2 to the total for I've got a problem here, but I feel like the destiny of 6 that you would have in your deck with that, plus the fact that it's a pretty good starship, maybe the fact that it doesn't have immunity means a lot, but I don't know. It seems like that was a good trade-off to have as far as I know, rarely used interrupt get a bonus against him when his destiny is 6 and he's got a high forfeit. Into the dark side now. Not a lot of interesting dark side characters. I mean, some of the Cantina aliens have interesting lore, like Danik Jericho especially. But not a lot of super useful cards, at least from whatever I've used or seen used. I guess one big exception there is U3PO, a very cheap undercover spy. Plus, if its cover gets broken, it's not like you're going to be able to beat down the dark side and battle their undercover spy, because it's just a droid, so it gets stolen if its cover's broken. Can mess up your opponent for a couple turns, maybe less if they already have undercover spy protection ready to go. Tractor beams are always fun. Capturing starships can really swing a battle in the game. And there was an epic event in the light side section already of this video, but I think Commence Primary Ignition, I don't know, a lot of the dark side cards, the card type looks better. Just that purple in contrast to all the red. I thought that was a good choice to make epic events purple and later objectives purple. Remember my dad got me a Death Star. It was probably the first single card I'd ever gotten, either a gift for me or something I bought for myself. This is probably that same one. But yeah, definitely very cool to have 3 icons to your opponent's 0. And even if you, I mean, back when we were playing, having that advantage was a pretty big deal, even though it let light side go first. And Conquest, a cool looking Star Destroyer. Bluff rules are pretty complicated. I'm not even sure I know exactly what they are, but an interesting idea. And of course the Super Laser. So it looks really cool as a foil, and with some virtual cards that just came out, I might be able to use this in a deck that actually blows up Alderaan. So that is Premiere to A New Hope. I think we're getting a little bit long on time here, so I'll do the next sets later. But yeah, a lot of interrupts that are still pretty useful, and some odds and ends here. But later on, we'll see the characters that have made more of an impact, and are definitely in a lot of my decks now. So hope you like this video, and hope you tune in for future ones. Thanks for watching.